The sun was warm that morning when Ayan stepped out of his small house, stretching his arms. His loyal dog, Bruno, wagged his tail and followed him to the porch. Bruno was a strong brown Labrador with kind eyes and a playful heart. For 5 years he had been Ayan's closest friend, always beside him through thick and thin. Every morning they walked together around the small neighborhood, greeting the same faces and enjoying the same calm air. But today, things felt different. The air in the house was filled with a strange excitement and nervousness. Ayan's wife, Rita, was in the hospital. She was about to give birth to their first child. Ayan had hardly slept the night before, and even Bruno seemed to sense something was happening. The dog stayed near the door, whining softly every time he heard a car or a phone ring. Ayan bent down and patted Bruno's head. "It's okay, boy. Rita will be fine. We'll bring the baby home soon." Bruno wagged his tail but kept looking at the door as if waiting for someone to walk in. He did not understand what a baby was, but he could tell that his family was about to change. Hours later, Ayan received the message he had been waiting for. Rita had given birth to a healthy baby boy. His heart filled with joy and tears ran down his cheeks. Bruno jumped around, barking as if he knew something good had happened. Ayan laughed and hugged him. "You're going to have a little brother, Bruno." For the next few days, Ayan stayed busy between the hospital and the house. Bruno stayed home with a neighbor who fed him and took him for short walks. But the dog was restless. He missed Ayan and wanted to know where Rita was. Every time the neighbor came, Bruno would run to the gate and sniff the air, hoping to catch a familiar scent. Finally, after 5 long days, Ayan came home. He was tired, but smiling, holding a small blue blanket in his hands. Rita followed him slowly, her face pale but happy. Bruno ran toward them with excitement, barking loudly, but Ayan quickly stopped him. "No, Bruno, not now. Calm down." The dog froze and sat down, confused. His tail wagged slowly as he looked at the blanket. He could hear soft sounds coming from it, tiny cries that were new to him. His ears perked up and his head tilted as he tried to understand. "This is the baby," Rita said softly. "His name is Arav." She smiled and looked at the sleeping child in her arms. Bruno stayed quiet, watching every move. He wanted to go closer, to sniff and see what this small creature was, but Ayan kept a careful distance. He had read that dogs could be unpredictable around newborns and he didn't want to take any risk. For the next few weeks, Bruno had to stay away from the baby. Ayan set up a gate between the living room and the baby's room. Bruno could see Rita and Arav from a distance, but he was not allowed to go near them. At first, he barked and scratched at the gate, confused about why his family suddenly seemed far from him. But when Ayan scolded him gently, he stopped and only watched quietly from his side. Rita felt bad for him. "He looks so sad," she told Ayan one night as they sat near the baby's crib. "He just wants to be close to us. He's part of the family." "I know," Ayan said, looking at Bruno lying on the floor near the gate. "But we can't take a chance. The baby is too small. Maybe after a few weeks." Bruno could hear their voices but not understand the words. He only knew that something had changed. He was no longer the center of attention. When Rita fed the baby, Ayan helped her and Bruno sat quietly, waiting for someone to notice him. Sometimes he would bring his favorite ball and drop it near Ayan's feet, but Ayan would only pat his head once and say, "Not now, boy." Still, Bruno waited. He never barked near the baby, never made a mess. He only sat near the gate every day, his eyes following Rita as she moved around with Arav. When the baby cried, Bruno's ears would lift and he would whine softly as if trying to comfort him from afar. One afternoon, Rita was sitting on the couch with Arav sleeping in her arms. The room was quiet. Bruno was lying near the gate, his eyes half closed. Suddenly the baby began to cry. The sound startled Bruno and he stood up at once, pressing his paws on the gate. Rita smiled and whispered, "It's okay, little one." She rocked the baby gently, but he wouldn't stop crying. Bruno tilted his head and let out a low whine, almost like he was trying to speak. Rita looked at him, feeling a strange warmth in her heart. "You want to help, don't you?" she said softly. Bruno wagged his tail. He stayed still, waiting for permission to come closer. Rita hesitated for a moment, but then Ayan's words echoed in her mind. Not yet. She sighed and shook her head. Soon, Bruno. Soon you'll meet him. Days turned into weeks. Bruno's patience became a quiet story in the house. Every evening, Ayan noticed him sitting near the gate, his head resting on his paws, looking at the baby's room. It almost felt like Bruno was guarding them. One night, something unexpected happened. It was past midnight when Ayan woke up to the sound of Arav crying. Rita was too tired, so Ayan got up and went to the crib. As he picked up the baby, Bruno suddenly started barking from the other side of the gate. Ayan frowned. "What's wrong with you, boy?" Bruno barked again, louder this time. His body was tense and his eyes were fixed on the corner of the room. Ayan turned and saw nothing. But when he looked closer, he noticed that the curtain was caught in the fan, pulling dangerously close to a lit candle on the table. In a flash, Ayan rushed and put it out. His heart was racing. He looked at Bruno, realizing the dog had sensed the danger before him. Ayan's anger turned to gratitude. He opened the gate and called Bruno inside. "Good boy," he whispered. "You saved us." Bruno wagged his tail, his eyes shining. He looked at the baby and then at Ayan, standing still as if asking for permission to go near. Ayan hesitated, but then nodded slowly. Bruno stepped closer, his movements gentle. He sniffed the air and lowered his head near Arav's tiny hand. The baby stopped crying and opened his eyes. For a moment, the house was silent. Then something magical happened. Arav reached out and touched Bruno's nose. The dog froze, and then his tail began to wag softly. Ayan stood there speechless. The two of them, the loyal dog and the newborn baby, shared their first moment together. That night marked the beginning of a new bond, one that no one had expected. The next morning, Ayan woke up to the sound of birds outside and the soft breathing of his wife and baby. For the first time in weeks, the house felt peaceful. Bruno was lying quietly near the crib, his head resting on his paws, watching Arav sleep. His brown eyes looked calm and proud, as if he knew he had earned his place back with the family. When Rita opened her eyes, she smiled. "He stayed there all night?" she whispered. Ayan nodded. "Yes, he didn't move. Just watched over us." Rita looked at the dog with affection. "He has always been loyal. I think he understands the baby now." Bruno lifted his head and wagged his tail when he heard their voices. When Ayan picked up Arav to feed him, Bruno followed carefully, staying close but never too near. It was as if he knew he had to be gentle. As days passed, Bruno became part of the baby's daily routine. Whenever Rita sang a lullaby, Bruno lay beside her. When Arav cried, Bruno would sit near the crib, his tail brushing the floor slowly. Sometimes, when Rita took the baby for a walk in the garden, Bruno walked beside the stroller, proud and alert like a guard. The neighbors often stopped to admire them. "Your dog is so calm around the baby," one woman said. "Most dogs would be nervous." Ayan smiled proudly. He waited a long time to meet him. "I think he feels like a big brother now." But Bruno's bond with Arav was more than anyone understood. One afternoon, when Rita was folding laundry, she placed the baby on a soft blanket near the couch. Arav began to move his tiny hands and make small sounds. Bruno sat near him, watching every movement. Suddenly, Arav grabbed Bruno's ear and tugged it lightly. Rita gasped, ready to scold, but Bruno didn't move away. He stayed still, only wagging his tail as if he knew the baby didn't mean harm. Rita smiled with relief. "Good boy, Bruno, you're so gentle." After that day, Bruno and Arav were hardly apart. Bruno followed him everywhere like a silent shadow. When Rita placed the baby in his crib, Bruno sat right under it watching. If Arav made a sound, Bruno was the first to notice. One evening, a sudden thunderstorm shook the town. The rain hit the windows and the thunder made loud cracks across the sky. The lights flickered once and went out. Arav began to cry, scared by the noise. Rita held him close, whispering softly. Bruno stood near them, his body tense. Ayan lit a candle and checked the windows. "It's just a storm. It'll pass." But when another thunder rolled through the sky, the baby cried louder. Rita tried to calm him, but nothing worked. Then Bruno walked closer and gently licked Arav's tiny hand. The baby blinked, startled, and then stopped crying. He looked at Bruno, his big eyes filled with curiosity. Bruno wagged his tail and rested his head near the baby's blanket. Rita looked at Ayan, surprised.
He stopped crying. Ayan smiled.
I think Bruno did what we couldn't. From that day, Bruno became more than just a dog. He became Arav's comfort. Whenever Arav cried, Bruno came close and made soft whines until the baby smiled. When Rita sang songs, Bruno would join in with small happy barks, making Arav laugh. The small family grew closer with each passing day. Ayan often sat on the porch in the evenings, holding Arav while Bruno lay beside them. The sunset painted the sky in soft colors, and the three looked like a picture of peace. One afternoon, Ayan decided to test Bruno's bond. He placed Arav's small toy on the floor and said, "Bruno, bring it here." Bruno looked at the toy, then at the baby, as if asking permission. When Arav giggled, Bruno gently picked it up and dropped it beside him. The baby laughed louder, clapping his hands. Rita laughed from the kitchen. Looks like Bruno has learned a new trick, but Ayan noticed something else. Bruno seemed to understand Arav's sounds. Whenever the baby laughed, Bruno became excited. When Arav looked sad, Bruno's tail slowed down. It was as if they had their own secret way of talking without words. Weeks passed and Arav started crawling. The small house became lively with his laughter and movement. Bruno followed him everywhere, never letting him out of sight. If Arav crawled toward the stairs, Bruno blocked the path gently with his body. If Arav reached for something dangerous, Bruno barked once to alert Rita. The bond between them became something everyone in the neighborhood talked about. "I've never seen anything like it," said one neighbor. "It's like the dog is his guardian." Rita smiled. "He really is. Bruno looks after him better than anyone." But one night, something happened that made Ayan realize how deep that bond truly was. It was past midnight. The rain was falling softly outside and everyone was asleep. Suddenly, Bruno lifted his head. His ears twitched. He heard something, a faint hissing sound coming from the kitchen. He stood up quietly and sniffed the air. Something smelled strange, something sharp and dangerous. Bruno walked toward the kitchen and saw a small stream of gas leaking from the stove. He barked once, then twice, running toward Ayan's room. Ayan woke up, confused. "What is it, boy?" Bruno barked again, louder, and ran back to the kitchen. Ayan followed him, half awake, and his eyes widened when he saw the leak. He rushed to close the valve and open the windows. The smell filled the room. Rita came running with Arav in her arms, worried. "What happened?" Ayan looked at Bruno and said in a shaky voice, "He saved us again." Rita hugged Arav tight, her eyes wide with gratitude. Bruno stood still, tail wagging softly, his eyes shining in the candlelight. After that night, Ayan began to trust Bruno completely. He no longer kept any gates between them. The dog was free to stay wherever he wanted. He often slept near the baby's crib, his breathing calm and steady like a silent guard watching over his family. As Arav grew stronger, Bruno became his best friend. They played together on the grass, shared small naps, and even ate near each other. Rita often laughed and said, "It feels like I have 2 children instead of 1. Ayan smiled. "Yes, and one of them has 4 legs. Still, there was something mysterious about their bond. Sometimes when Arav sat on the floor playing with his toys, Bruno would suddenly lift his head and stare toward the window, his body tense. Ayan noticed this more than once. Each time, Bruno's eyes looked as if he sensed something outside, something no one else could see. Ayan tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the dog's instinct. But one evening, Bruno's strange behavior became too hard to dismiss. Arav was in his cradle, giggling while Bruno sat beside him. Suddenly, Bruno's ears perked up and he growled softly at the door. His body stiffened. Ayan frowned. "What's wrong, boy?" Bruno didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the door. The growl grew louder. Ayan walked over and opened it, but there was nothing there. The street was empty. He closed the door again and looked at Bruno, who still seemed uneasy. "Maybe he heard something outside," Rita said, but Bruno's eyes said something else. He was protecting someone, not from the noise outside, but from something unseen. No one knew then that what Bruno sensed would soon lead to something shocking, something that would change how they saw him forever. The night after Bruno growled at the door, Ayan could not sleep properly. He kept thinking about the way the dog had stared at the door, his body stiff and alert. Bruno had never acted like that before. Normally he was calm and friendly, but something about that night felt different. When morning came, everything seemed normal again. The air smelled fresh after the rain, and sunlight poured through the curtains. Rita was in the kitchen preparing breakfast while Arav played on a soft mat in the living room. Bruno sat near the baby, watching him with warm eyes. It was a peaceful scene, yet Ayaan could not forget what had happened. He patted Bruno's head and said, "You scared me last night, boy. Did you hear something outside?" Bruno wagged his tail once, but then looked toward the door again for a brief moment. Ayaan followed his gaze but saw nothing. The street was quiet. Still, a small sense of unease stayed in his mind. Later that day, Rita went to the nearby market. Ayaan stayed home with the baby. Bruno was lying on the floor near Arav, who was now trying to crawl. The baby moved clumsily toward Bruno, laughing in his soft baby voice. Bruno lowered his head, letting the baby touch his fur. It was a beautiful sight, the kind that could melt anyone's heart. Suddenly, there was a sound outside the window. It was faint, like a footstep. Bruno's ears twitched. He stood up quickly and looked toward the sound. Ayaan also heard it. He walked to the window and peered outside, but saw only the neighbor's fence and a few trees swaying in the wind. "It must be the wind," Ayaan said to himself. But Bruno stayed tense, his tail straight, his eyes sharp. When Rita returned home later, she noticed the mood was strange. "What happened?" she asked. Ayaan shook his head. "Nothing, I think. Bruno just keeps hearing something. Maybe a cat outside." Rita bent down and patted Bruno's back. "You're a good boy, always watching over us." Bruno wagged his tail, but his eyes still looked toward the window. That night the wind picked up again, and the trees outside made soft creaking sounds. Ayaan and Rita were about to sleep when Bruno began barking suddenly. His voice was loud and filled with alarm. Arav, who was sleeping in his crib, woke up crying. Ayaan jumped from the bed. "What is it this time?" he said, and hurried to the living room. Bruno was standing near the window again, barking fiercely. Ayaan looked out but saw nothing except darkness. Still, something about the barking felt serious, not like his usual alert to a cat or squirrel. Rita came carrying the baby, trying to calm him. "Maybe someone passed by," she said. But Ayaan noticed Bruno's fur standing on his back. The dog was not just alert, he was protecting. The next morning, Ayaan went outside to check the yard. Everything seemed fine, but near the gate he found something strange. A few muddy footprints led toward the house, then stopped near the window where Bruno had barked the night before. They were not large, maybe from shoes. He frowned and felt a chill. When Rita saw the footprints, her face turned pale. "Do you think someone tried to come in?" "I don't know," Ayaan said, thinking deeply. "Maybe it's nothing, but I'll make sure the gate is locked every night from now on." After that, Ayaan became more cautious. Each night he checked every door and window. Bruno stayed inside near Arav's crib, alert even while lying down. His eyes followed every shadow and his ears moved at every small sound. A few days later, Rita had to visit her parents' house for 2 days. Ayaan decided to stay home with Bruno and Arav. The first night without Rita felt quiet and strange. The baby was already asleep and Ayaan sat reading a book. Bruno lay nearby, his eyes half open, always listening. Suddenly Bruno stood up. His nose twitched. He looked toward the kitchen and then toward the door. Ayaan lifted his head from the book. "What is it, boy?" Bruno growled softly. His eyes were fixed on the door again. Ayaan listened carefully. At first he heard nothing, then a soft click, like someone trying to open the gate outside. He froze. Slowly he stood up and switched off the light, leaving the room in shadows. He moved toward the window and looked through the curtain. In the dim streetlight, he saw a figure standing near the gate. The person was dressed in dark clothes and seemed to be trying to open the lock. Ayaan's heart started to race. Bruno barked loudly, running to the door. The sound echoed through the quiet street. The figure froze for a second, then turned and ran away into the dark. Ayaan opened the door slightly and saw the man disappearing into the alley. The next morning, Ayaan called the police and told them what had happened. They came to inspect and said there had been reports of a thief in the neighborhood for several nights. Bruno's barking had scared him away before he could enter. The officers looked at Bruno and smiled. "You're lucky to have a dog like him. He probably saved you and your family." Ayaan looked at Bruno with pride. He bent down and hugged him. Good boy. You really are our protector. When Rita returned home, Ayan told her everything. She listened with wide eyes, holding Arav close. I can't believe it. Bruno saved us again. After that day, everyone in the neighborhood admired Bruno even more. Children came to play with him, and adults often brought him treats. But Bruno never became distracted. His eyes still watched carefully, especially when Arav was nearby. One afternoon, Rita placed Arav in his stroller and took him to the park. Bruno walked beside them, calm but alert as always. Arav laughed as the stroller moved, and Bruno wagged his tail happily. At the park, Rita sat on a bench and watched other families enjoying the sunny day. Arav was giggling, reaching for Bruno's ears. Everything seemed perfect until Bruno suddenly stiffened. His body became tense and his ears pointed forward. Rita noticed at once. What is it, Bruno? The dog's eyes were fixed on a man standing at the far end of the park. The man was tall and wearing a dark jacket. He was watching them. Rita's heart beat faster. She remembered what had happened with the thief. Bruno stood in the park, his eyes locked on the man in the dark jacket. His body became tense, his tail straight, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Rita followed his gaze and saw the man staring in their direction. Her heart began to beat faster. She held the stroller handle tightly and looked around, but there were not many people nearby. The man turned away and began to walk slowly toward the exit. Still, Bruno did not relax. He stood alert, his eyes following every step. Rita tried to calm herself. It's okay, Bruno. Maybe he's just passing by. Bruno looked up at her, then back at the man. He did not bark, but his expression stayed sharp. Rita decided it was time to go home. She turned the stroller around and began walking quickly. Bruno walked beside her, his eyes checking every corner. When they reached home, Rita locked the gate and sat down to breathe. She could not shake off the strange feeling from the park. Ayan came home a little later and saw her face. What's wrong? He asked. Rita told him about the man in the park and how Bruno had reacted. Ayan frowned. You think it was the same person who tried to come into the house? I don't know, she said. But Bruno looked ready to fight. It scared me. Ayan looked at Bruno, who was lying near the baby's crib now, calm but alert. Maybe he remembered the smell, Ayan said. Dogs never forget. That night, after putting Arav to sleep, Ayan sat by the window for a long time. The neighborhood was quiet. The streetlights glowed dimly and the air was cool. Bruno sat near him, looking outside too. You're a brave one, Bruno, Ayan said softly. You've saved us twice. I trust you completely. Bruno looked up and wagged his tail once, then returned his gaze to the window as if he was still guarding the house. The next few days passed peacefully. Bruno and Arav's bond grew even stronger. Arav had learned to crawl faster and would chase after Bruno across the living room, laughing loudly. Bruno played gently, never rough, and always careful not to step on the baby. Sometimes when Arav got tired, he would rest against Bruno's soft fur and fall asleep there. It was a sight that melted everyone's heart. One afternoon, Rita took Arav into the garden. The flowers were blooming and the air smelled sweet. Bruno followed them, wagging his tail. Rita placed a blanket on the grass and laid Arav there. He laughed as Bruno nudged him with his nose. Ayan came home early that day and smiled at the sight. Looks like my family is having fun, he said, joining them. Bruno barked happily and ran around them in circles. For a while, everything felt perfect again. But later that evening, the peace was broken. As night fell, Ayan stepped outside to close the gate. He noticed something unusual. A small scratch near the lock, as if someone had tried to open it. His stomach tightened. He looked around, but the street was empty. He quickly locked the gate and went inside. Rita was in the kitchen. Ayan told her what he saw and her face went pale. What if that man came back? I'll call the police tomorrow, Ayan said. For now, we'll keep Bruno inside all night. That night, Bruno stayed in the living room near the main door. He did not sleep much. His ears twitched at every sound. Around midnight, he suddenly lifted his head. There was a soft noise outside and a faint click again. Bruno stood up, muscles tight. His eyes glowed in the dim light from the window. He moved toward the door and growled softly. The noise came again, louder this time. Ayan, who was half asleep, woke up and rushed out. Bruno, what is it? Before he could reach the door, there was a loud bang. The front gate had been forced open. Bruno barked fiercely, his voice echoing through the street. Ayan grabbed his phone and turned on the lights. Through the window he saw two shadowy figures running away from the gate. Bruno wanted to chase them, but Ayan stopped him. "No, boy, stay." He called the police at once. Within minutes, an officer arrived and checked the gate. "It looks like they were trying to break in again," the officer said. "You're lucky your dog scared them off." Rita held Arav close, her eyes full of fear. "They keep coming back," she whispered. Ayan sighed and looked at Bruno. "They won't get past him. He's the reason we're safe." After that night, Ayan installed new locks and cameras around the house. Still, Bruno never let his guard down. He stayed near Arav's crib every night, his eyes open and ears alert. Days passed and the family tried to return to normal. Bruno seemed calm again, though he never strayed far from the baby. Arav had now started saying small words, and one morning as Bruno sat near him, Arav smiled and said his first clear word, "Bruno." Rita's eyes filled with tears. "He said Bruno," she whispered. "His first word?" Ayan laughed with joy. "Looks like his first friend wins the honor." Bruno wagged his tail excitedly, licking Arav's small hand. The baby laughed, clapping his hands with delight. That moment filled the house with warmth and love. But the story was not over yet. One night, when Ayan had to travel for work, Rita and Arav stayed alone with Bruno. The weather turned stormy again and heavy rain began to fall. The wind howled outside and lightning flashed. Rita checked all the doors and windows before going to bed. Around midnight, Bruno began to growl again. His ears were sharp, his body stiff. Rita woke up and sat up in bed. "What's wrong?" she whispered. Bruno moved toward the window, growling louder now. Arav stirred in his sleep. Rita got up and walked to the window, but the rain made it hard to see. Then she noticed something. A shadow near the back fence moving slowly. Her heart began to race. She picked up her phone and tried to call Ayan, but there was no signal because of the storm. The power suddenly went out, leaving the house in darkness. Arav began to cry. Bruno barked loudly, rushing toward the back door. Rita followed, holding a flashlight. The light flickered on, revealing the back door shaking. "Someone was trying to open it. Go away," Rita shouted. But the person outside pushed harder. Bruno barked again, his growl deep and strong. Then there was silence for a few seconds. Rita's hands trembled as she held Arav close. Suddenly, the sound of running footsteps came from the yard, then faded into the storm. Bruno stayed near the door, barking for a while, then stopped and looked at Rita. The next morning, Ayan returned home and found the back fence broken. The police came again and found footprints in the mud. The same thief had tried to enter once more, but failed because of Bruno. The officer looked at Ayan and said, "Your dog is brave. He saved your family not once, but many times." Ayan bent down and hugged Bruno tightly. "You're not just a pet, you're our guardian." That day, Rita cooked Bruno's favorite meal as a thank you. Arav laughed and played beside him, his tiny hands resting on Bruno's back. From that day forward, Bruno became a hero in their small town. People spoke of the brave dog who had protected his family again and again. But even though everyone called him a hero, Bruno didn't change. He stayed the same gentle guardian, always near Arav, always watching. Still, Ayan sometimes noticed Bruno staring out of the window late at night. The dog would sit quietly, eyes fixed on the darkness outside, as if he knew the danger might return one day. What none of them knew was that Bruno's instincts were right. Something was still out there, waiting for the right time, and soon an event would happen that no one could have imagined. The morning after the storm, the air was calm again. The sun shone over the wet garden and water drops glistened on the flowers. Ayan sat on the porch sipping his tea while Bruno lay beside him. Arav was inside with Rita, laughing as she played peekaboo with him. The house felt peaceful again, but Ayan still had the memory of the broken fence in his mind. Bruno lifted his head and looked around, his ears twitching. Even though the storm had passed, he stayed alert. His eyes kept scanning the garden as if he expected something to appear. Ayan noticed this and smiled. "Still guarding us, huh?" he said, patting Bruno's back. "You never rest." Bruno wagged his tail once but did not relax. Deep inside, his instinct told him that something was not over yet. Later that day, Ayan went to the store to buy supplies for fixing the fence. Rita stayed home with Arav and Bruno. She placed the baby in his playpen and went to the kitchen to prepare lunch. Bruno sat near Arav, who was happily shaking his toy rattle. Everything felt normal until Bruno's ears suddenly stood up. He heard something, a faint sound near the window. He turned his head quickly and growled softly. The baby stopped moving and looked at him with wide eyes. Bruno walked toward the window slowly, sniffing the air. Rita heard the growl and came out of the kitchen. "What is it, Bruno?" she asked, walking closer. Before she could reach the window, the back door creaked open. Rita froze. Someone had entered the house. A tall man stepped inside quietly, his face covered with a scarf. Bruno barked loudly, his voice echoing through the rooms. Rita screamed and grabbed Arav from the playpen. The man panicked and shouted, "Be quiet!" He moved toward Rita, but Bruno leaped in front of her, teeth bared, growling fiercely. The man stepped back, holding a stick in his hand, trying to scare the dog. Bruno didn't move. He stood between Rita and the man like a shield. Rita trembled, holding Arav close. "Go away!" she cried. The man raised his stick and swung it, trying to hit Bruno, but Bruno jumped aside and barked louder. The thief backed toward the door, but when he saw Rita trying to run, he moved forward again. Bruno lunged, biting the man's arm. The man shouted in pain and dropped the stick. Rita used that moment to run toward the main door. She opened it and screamed for help. Neighbors heard her and came running. Seeing people approaching, the thief pushed Bruno away and ran through the back gate, leaving behind the broken stick and a trail of mud. Rita fell to her knees, shaking, while Bruno limped back to her. She saw a small cut on his side and tears filled her eyes. "Oh, Bruno, you're hurt," she whispered, hugging him tightly. Bruno licked her hand softly as if saying he was fine. Arav reached out from her arms and touched Bruno's ear gently. Ayan arrived a few minutes later, running through the open gate after hearing the noise. When he saw Rita crying and Bruno bleeding, his heart dropped. "What happened?" he shouted. Rita told him everything while the neighbors called the police. The officer who had visited before came quickly. He looked at Bruno and said, "He's a hero again. This dog saved your family for the third time." Ayan knelt beside Bruno and gently checked his wound. "You brave boy. You saved them." He carried Bruno to the car and took him to the nearby vet. The doctor cleaned the wound and said it was not serious. "He will be fine after a few days of rest," the vet said with a smile. When Bruno returned home, Arav crawled toward him and touched his paw. Bruno wagged his tail weakly and rested his head near the baby. It was as if he was saying he would never let anything happen to them. Over the next few days, the house was filled with love and care. Rita and Ayan made sure Bruno rested well. Arav often sat beside him, playing quietly. It was clear that Bruno's bond with the baby had become something extraordinary. Ayan decided to install stronger locks, new lights, and cameras all around the house. The police caught the thief 2 days later. They found him hiding in another part of town. When they told Ayan, he finally felt safe. That evening, as the sun set, Ayan sat in the garden with Bruno. The sky turned golden, and a cool wind blew. "You did it, Bruno," Ayan said softly. "You protected us every time. I'll never forget that." Bruno looked up at him and wagged his tail, his eyes calm and loyal. Rita came out with Arav, who laughed as he saw Bruno. She placed the baby on the grass near him. Arav crawled forward and hugged Bruno's neck, resting his little face against the dog's fur. Rita smiled. "Look at them," she said. "They're inseparable." From that day on, Arav and Bruno became the heart of the house. They spent every moment together. Wherever Arav went, Bruno followed. When Arav took his first steps, Bruno walked beside him, as if ready to catch him if he fell. As weeks passed, people in the neighborhood began to talk about the brave dog who had protected his family not once but many times. They called him the guardian of the street. Children often came to see him, bringing small treats and toys. Bruno always greeted them kindly but never let anyone near Arav without Rita's permission. One day, a reporter from a local newspaper came to meet them. He took a picture of Bruno with Arav and wrote an article titled, "The Loyal Dog Who Protected His Family 3 Times." The story spread quickly, and soon everyone in town knew about Bruno. But to Ayan, Rita, and Arav, Bruno was not just a hero. He was family. He was the heart that kept them safe and the soul that made their house a home. Months later, when Arav celebrated his first birthday, Bruno sat beside the high chair, watching the candles on the cake. When everyone sang the birthday song, Bruno barked once as if joining in. Arav laughed and clapped his hands. Ayan leaned down and whispered to Bruno, This day is special because of you too." That night, after everyone slept, Bruno walked quietly to Arav's room and lay down near his crib. The moonlight shone through the window, casting a soft glow. Arav stirred in his sleep and mumbled softly, "Bruno." Bruno lifted his head for a moment, wagged his tail gently, and closed his eyes. He was content, knowing his family was safe. From that night on, Bruno never left his post near the baby's crib. He would wake up at the smallest sound, ready to protect. Sometimes Ayan would find him staring out the window, watching the garden with calm eyes. It was as if Bruno was still guarding against unseen dangers, always alert, always loyal. As the months passed, life returned to peace. The fence was strong, the house was secure, and the fear that had once filled their hearts was gone. But one thing remained the same: the deep love between the baby and the dog. Years later, when Arav was old enough to walk and run on his own, Bruno still followed him everywhere. Whether it was playing in the garden, walking to school, or sleeping on the porch, Bruno never left his side. The neighbors often said, "That boy and his dog share a bond that cannot be broken." And they were right. Bruno had waited weeks to meet the baby. He had guarded him, played with him, and even risked his life for him. No one could have guessed that a dog's heart could hold such courage and love. In the end, it was not just about loyalty. It was about family. A family that learned what true protection, friendship, and love really meant because of one faithful dog who waited patiently and proved that sometimes the purest hearts come with fur and a wagging tail.